Yesterday, I laid out the current status of the Democratic primary. I really didn't think I said anything particularly controversial, and people really flipped out on me. And I'm going to show you some of the comments I received in a little bit. First, there were a few Hillary supporters who emailed me after I laid out sort of the math of the current Democratic primary yesterday and said, David, you're way too pro-Bernie. I had 3 or 4 emails saying I just can't take it. Now, those were outliers. The overwhelming majority of people who emailed me yesterday or commented on YouTube said, David, I can't take your anti-Bernie bias anymore, saying that it's unlikely he will be the nominee or that the math is not in his favor. You're out of your mind. So I think it makes sense, Lewis, at this point to really go through and spend a little bit of time explaining why the problem is not my presentation of the Democratic primary. And I am not, by being what I will show you is just realistic about the numbers, I am not going to cause Bernie to lose. And the rage from some of the Bernie supporters, and remember, I'm a Bernie supporter. I voted for Bernie in Massachusetts. I think it's misplaced, and it's starting to really concern me in terms of the election, more broadly speaking, in November.
Well, there are a couple issues that I want to touch on. I'm going to do that after we go through the numbers and after we go over some of the comments we've received. So I'll wait a little.
So currently, Hillary Clinton, 1,446 delegates. She needs 937 more to clinch the Democratic nomination. That's 56% of the delegates that remain. Bernie Sanders has 1,200 delegates, and he needs 1,183 to reach that magic number, 2,383. That is 70.9% of the delegates remaining. So the next question, if we're going to do a sort of sober and fact-based analysis of where this primary is, would be what do the upcoming big primaries look like? And how is Bernie Sanders doing? How is Hillary Clinton doing in those primaries? So upcoming, some of the bigger states that we have polling data for, and I'll make clear that some of the smaller states that aren't very many delegates, there is no recent, or in some cases, there's barely any polling data at all. But those little states are unlikely to really make a difference. So we'll look at the big states. For example, we have Connecticut upcoming. The most recent polling we have in Connecticut, which is 70 delegates, has Hillary at 50 and Bernie at 43. Now, that leaves 7% not in that poll. Even if they go to Bernie Sanders and it's 50-50, that does not get Bernie Sanders any closer to the nomination. We have Maryland with 118 delegates, where Hillary is ahead 57-36 at last poll. Pennsylvania, 120 delegates, Hillary Clinton up 51-39. And California with 546 delegates available. Most recent polling, Clinton 50, Bernie 40. Of course, that does not include 10% that are undecided or supporting someone else who presumably, mostly will go with either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders by the day of the California primary. So looking just at the numbers, the polling for Bernie Sanders does not go anywhere close to the 70.9% that he needs. Now, one devil's advocate argument would be, well, he doesn't need 70.9% of the vote to get 70.9% of the delegates based on how some counties allocate delegates. That's true, but 52% of the vote is not going to get him 71% of the delegates. So, Lewis, before we go into the comments and some of the cases being made by Bernie supporters, of which I am one, is your assessment of the data the same as mine, or is there something that's missing from our assessment, be it something about superdelegates or something about some other factor I'm not including here?
No, I would say that Bernie does have a tendency to outperform the polls. And so even if he outperforms every poll we're seeing here by 5 points or even slightly more, that still is not going to get him what he needs. So I guess I'm with you on these numbers and your estimations.
Okay, so now the Bernie winning scenario, Bernie winning before the convention scenario, I consider Not likely based on the math. This is not my opinion in terms of what I would like to have happen. This is just, if I look at the data, it doesn't seem likely. The scenario that is more likely is Hillary Clinton not clinching. As I mentioned, Hillary Clinton needs 56% of the remaining delegates, and it is certainly possible if Bernie Sanders can get 47, 48% of the remaining delegates, that while he doesn't secure the nomination before the convention, he prevents Hillary from doing so. And that would certainly give him more clout when we get to the convention. Now, let's get to the feedback that we got from Bernie supporters. Let's put this list up, Lewis, and then we'll break some of these down one by one. Here are some comments here that I received from Bernie supporters. This is one of the main reasons I don't watch your stuff as much anymore. Unlike the Young Turks and Secular Talk, you hardly cover Bernie, you hardly root for him, and these depressing videos make me want to unfollow you honestly. Sorry, but it's Bernie or bust, end of story. Another comment, people are mad at you because you seem okay with this. Another comment, Bernie did better in New York than Obama did against Hillary, and Obama eventually was the nominee, and stop spreading these establishment lies. So let me go through a few of these critiques, Lewis, and we'll see if any of them sort of hold water or make sense to us. Number one, you hardly cover Bernie. That was a critique. We hardly talk about him, and now I'm just saying it's over for Bernie. We've done, I went back and looked it up, a minimum of 22 stories over the last less than 1 month about Bernie Sanders. We do a 1-hour show, which when you remove breaks is a 45-minute show a day. And we did 22 stories, either exclusively or partially about Bernie Sanders, at minimum. There are some I know that I'm missing in my count here. So the idea, Lewis, that we're not covering Bernie, we've been covering Bernie from the beginning when he was polling 3%.
And there may very well be more Hillary Clinton stories than Bernie stories, but I would like to point out that most of those are negative and are very critical of Hillary Clinton. And so these, what we're dealing here with are people that will casually watch 1 or 2 of our videos every once in a while and then pretend they know what our views are and get the general idea of our program. This is really the same as one of those conservatives who pretends to know all about climate change, yet never does any of the research or looks into it at all. You're no different from that person.
Very good point. Then next, you hardly root for Bernie. Lewis has been clearly a Bernie supporter for months. I have clearly been a Bernie supporter for months and months. We've done comparisons between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. I've made it abundantly clear that Bernie is far more progressive and that I am far more progressive than Hillary Clinton, and I voted for Bernie Sanders in Massachusetts. So saying we hardly root for him, this is a program where we're trying to bring a fact-based analysis, and there's been no secret made, Lewis, that while I am not a Bernie or bust person, I will vote for Hillary Clinton if she is the nominee over the Republican options. How can anyone say we haven't been clear in our support of Bernie?
The problem is that some people are just blinded by their bias. What are you going to do about those people? They see things, they don't really see reality, they don't see facts. They just see what they want to see, and we can't do anything about that.
Another comment was the Bernie or bust thing. David, it's Bernie or bust. Why don't you get it? I don't subscribe to that, okay? And I subscribe to the undeniable reality that Hillary Clinton is too conservative on many issues. Hillary Clinton has ties to Wall Street that I don't like. Hillary Clinton has a neoconservative foreign policy that is far closer to many Republicans than it is to Bernie Sanders or a true progressive point of view. But I'm not voting for Donald Trump, and I'm not voting for Ted Cruz or Paul Ryan or whoever. And on balance, I subscribe to the Ted Kennedy approach of incrementalism and not saying, hey, if it's not going to be my preferred person, burn it all down. I subscribe to, if there's someone that will make some better decisions, then whoever it is that's over there on the far right, that's the person I subscribe to. Now, that's a matter of opinion, Lewis, but to say, David, because you're not Bernie or bust, you're not giving us the right analysis or the right data, I reject that completely. And then the other comment there was that Obama didn't start picking up delegates until June, and that Obama did worse in New York than Bernie Sanders did. That's true. Hillary Clinton won New York in 2008 against President Obama, 139 to 93 in terms of the delegate count. And Hillary Clinton won 2 days ago against Bernie Sanders in New York, 139 to 106 in New York. So it is indeed mathematically true that Obama did worse than Bernie in New York and eventually was the nominee. That doesn't prove anything. I still maintain, Lewis, that our analysis has just been a realistic analysis. And the worst of all the comments is when people write to me and they say, David, the problem is people like you aren't just rallying behind Bernie even now. My job here is not to cheerlead in a way that is going to make the audience think something that isn't the reality. But I would take it a step further, Lewis. When you hear me say, this is an unlikely scenario for Bernie Sanders to clinch the nomination, don't get mad at me because I'm discouraging people. Go out and vote, because we know that the higher the voter turnout, the more likely the more progressive candidate is to win. If you hear me say the mathematical path for Bernie is not a likely one, prove me wrong, so to speak, by going out and voting rather than saying that I am the problem because I'm presenting math. So, Lewis, I'll open it up to you now.
I'll keep this quick. If facts, truth, and reality are not your thing, don't watch our program. And if you want to live in a fantasy world, don't turn the TV on and stay off the internet.
I couldn't say it better. I mean, this is not a show that is a pro-Hillary shilling show. We've been abundantly clear that Bernie Sanders is the progressive candidate. We've been incredibly critical of Hillary Clinton. But this is also not a show that's just going to pretend, as I saw some people do yesterday, doing mathematical gymnastics to show how there's nothing concerning at all going on for Bernie Sanders' path to the White House, that it's all, listen, this all makes sense, and Bernie Sanders outperformed Obama in New York, and it's all going to be great for Bernie. We're presenting you with what we see as the mathematical case that's going on here. The way that you can prove us wrong is just go out and vote and make something else happen.